My sister told me to live on the streets days before my SATs, but when I sent the recording to her fiancé, the $50,000 wedding got canceled, and now my parents are begging me to come back. I'm 17. I'm in my senior year of high school, and about 3 weeks ago, my life literally did a complete 180 because of my sister Ashley and my parents. I still can't believe all of this happened, but here I am, living with my best friend's family and basically with no biological family. And honestly, I've never felt better. I know that sounds weird, but you'll understand why. I guess I should start by explaining what my family was like before all this. Though to be honest, it was always a mess. I was just too young to realize it. Ashley is 24, so she's 7 years older than me, and basically for as long as I can remember, she's been my parents' golden child. Everything she did was perfect. Everything I did was invisible or wrong. When she got good grades, there was celebration. When I got good grades, it was expected and that was it. When she wanted something, my parents moved heaven and earth to give it to her. When I needed something, like school supplies or new clothes, it was like I was asking them for a kidney. You know what I mean? It was that type of dynamic where there's always a favorite child, and the other one is basically just another piece of furniture in the house. It's not like my parents were super abusive or anything, like they didn't hit me or anything, but emotionally they were always absent with me. My mom worked in an office, my dad had a construction business, they both made good money, we weren't poor or anything, but all the money and attention went to Ashley. She went to a private university that cost a fortune. She got a new car when she turned 16. My parents paid for her apartment until recently. I, on the other hand, had to buy my own laptop with money I saved working weekends at a coffee shop since I was 15. They never offered help, never asked if I needed anything. It was like I just existed in the house, but wasn't really part of the family. You know? Ashley was always super selfish and spoiled. Obviously, because that's how they raised her. When we were kids, she completely ignored me, unless she needed something from me, like to do her a favor or cover for her with my parents when she did something wrong. She was never a real sister. She was more like a distant cousin who lives in your house but doesn't even say good morning to you. When she left for college, I thought things would get better, that maybe my parents would pay more attention to me, but no. They kept talking about her all the time, visiting her every weekend, sending her care packages and extra money. I was still the ghost of the house. About a year ago, Ashley met Steven at her work. I think he's an engineer or something, and they started dating. Steven always seemed like a good person to me, honestly, too good for Ashley if I'm being real. When he came to dinner at the house, he'd ask me how school was going. He'd make normal conversation. He was literally the only person in my family who seemed to remember I existed. In November last year, they got engaged, and Ashley went into full bridezilla mode. The wedding was going to be in April, like literally a few weeks ago, and during all that time, it was hell living in that house because everything, absolutely everything, revolved around the damn wedding. My parents emptied their savings for the wedding. Like we're talking about an event with like 300 guests at a super fancy venue, designer dress, honeymoon in Europe, the whole thing. Meanwhile, I was trying to study for the SATs that I was taking in April too, because I need good grades to apply for college scholarships since obviously nobody's going to pay for my college. I had my room full of practice books. I spent every afternoon after school studying. My friends knew I couldn't go out much because I needed to focus. The SATs were literally on April 20th, and Ashley's wedding was planned for April 26th, so I had everything calculated to study until the test, and then maybe relax a bit and endure the wedding. April 15th, a Friday afternoon. I got home from school and my parents were both in the living room waiting for me. Right there, I knew something weird was going on because normally they didn't even talk to me when I got home. My mom told me they needed to talk to me about something important, and I thought, I don't know. Maybe they finally realized I exist and want to ask me how everything's going. How naive, honestly. My dad told me straight up that they needed my room for wedding guests coming from out of town. That Steven's parents and some uncles were arriving on Monday the 18th, like in 3 days, and they were going to stay at our house until after the wedding. That Ashley had decided my room was the most appropriate for them because it was big and had its own bathroom, and that I needed to pack my things and leave the room available. I said what? Like I literally said what? Because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I reminded him that my SATs were on the 20th, that I needed my space to study, that where was I supposed to sleep? My mom told me I could sleep on the living room, couch, or in the basement, that it was only going to be a few days, not to be dramatic. I told them no, that it was absurd, that I had the most important exam of my life in 5 days and I needed my room. My dad got angry and told me to stop being selfish, that Ashley's wedding was more important, that the guests needed to be comfortable, that I could study at the library or anywhere else. We started arguing. I was super upset because I couldn't believe they were doing this to me. And in the end, my dad told me I had until Sunday night to get all my stuff out of the room or he would throw it out himself. I went to my room furious and called Ashley. I thought maybe she could talk to my parents, convince them this was crazy, that her guests could stay at a hotel like normal people. I called her like 6 times before she answered, and when she finally did, I explained what was happening. I told her my parents were kicking me out of my room for her guests, that my SATs were in 5 days, that this didn't make sense. And you know what she told me? She told me to stop being so dramatic, that it was just a week, that if it was such a problem, I could go live on the streets if I wanted. She literally told me that, go live on the streets if it bothers you so much, and she hung up on me. I just sat there on my bed in shock, trying to process that my own sister had just told me to go live on the streets, that my parents were kicking me out of my room when I had the most important exam of my life in days. And in that moment, something clicked in my head. Like I realized that these people didn't love me, had never loved me, and probably were never going to love me. That no matter what I did or said, I was always going to be invisible to them. I called my best friend, Jess. I'd known her since 6th grade, and she was basically my only real family, and told her everything while crying. She told me to pack my things, that her parents had said I could stay at her house as long as I needed. Jess's parents had always been super nice to me. They knew what my family situation was like, though I'd never told them all the details. I think it was obvious my parents didn't pay attention to me. That same Friday night, I packed 2 suitcases with my clothes, my books, my laptop, all my important things, and I went to Jess's house. My parents didn't even ask me where I was going. When I came down with the suitcases, my mom was watching TV, and my dad was in his office. Neither of them even looked at me. I left that house and felt like a giant weight lift off my shoulders, but at the same time I was devastated because, they were my parents, right? Your parents are supposed to take care of you, support you, be there for you in important moments. And they had literally kicked me out of the house a week before the most important exam of my life because their favorite daughter's wedding guests needed to be comfortable. Jess's parents, Linda and Mark, 45 years old, both of them, super cool, welcomed me with open arms. They gave me the guest room, told me not to worry about anything, to focus on my SATs. Linda cooked my favorite food that night, and Mark helped me organize my study schedule for the next few days. Literally in one day. These people who technically had no obligation to me gave me more support and love than my own parents in 17 years. It's sad, but it's the truth. That weekend, I studied like crazy, tried not to think about the whole situation with my family, focused only on the SATs. Jess helped me, making flashcards with me. Her parents made sure I had everything I needed. Quiet to study, good food. Mark even took me to buy more number 2 pencils because I was running out. Monday, I got to Jess's house after school, and she told me her mom had seen on Facebook that the wedding guests were already at my house, that they'd posted photos in my room. Well, it wasn't my room anymore, I guess, saying what a nice room and what a hospitable family. It made me so angry to see that, but I tried not to let it affect me. Wednesday the 20th, I took my SATs. I'm not going to lie. It was super hard to concentrate at first because my head was in 1,000 places, thinking about the whole situation, wondering how things had gotten to this point, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. But I took a deep breath, remembered everything I'd studied, and I did the best I could. Honestly, I think I did well considering the circumstances. It wasn't my best performance, but it wasn't a disaster either. After the exam, I sat in Linda's car. She'd driven me to the testing center, and something in me just exploded. I told her everything. Absolutely everything. I told her this wasn't new, that my parents had always treated me like I didn't exist, that Ashley had always been the favorite, that I'd had to work since I was 15 to buy my own things while they paid for everything for her. I told her when I turned 16, they didn't even make me a special dinner. But when Ashley turned 16, they threw her a party with 200 people. I told her they'd never been to a single parent-teacher conference of mine, but never missed Ashley's events. Everything came out like verbal vomit, and Linda just hugged me and told me she was so sorry, that no child deserved to be treated like that. That night I decided I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. I opened Instagram and sent a direct message to Steven, Ashley's fiancé. I explained everything that had happened, sent him screenshots of the conversation with Ashley, where she told me to go live on the streets. Told him they'd kicked me out of my house a week before my SATs to accommodate his parents. I told him he'd always seemed like a good person to me, and that I felt he deserved to know the kind of people he was marrying into. Honestly, I wasn't expecting much from that message. I thought maybe he'd read it and ignore it, or that Ashley would convince him I was exaggerating, but I needed to try. The next day, Thursday, the 21st, Steven called me. He was super upset, told me he'd confronted Ashley about what I told him and that she'd admitted everything. That she'd told him, yes, they'd kicked me out of the room for his parents. But it wasn't a big deal because I could sleep on the couch. Steven asked her why they hadn't put his parents in a hotel like he'd originally suggested, and Ashley told him it was because she didn't like me, that she'd always found me annoying and irritating, and that this was a good opportunity to get me out of the way for a while. Steven told me all this on the phone, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry because I finally had confirmation that my sister really hated me for no real reason, just because. Steven told me he was reconsidering the wedding, that this had shown him a side of Ashley he didn't know and that it scared him to think about, building a life with someone so cruel. I told him I was sorry, that I hadn't meant to ruin his wedding, but he interrupted me and told me not to apologize, that I hadn't done anything wrong, that actually he was grateful to me for opening his eyes. We hung up and I felt weird, like relieved but also guilty because, well, I'd technically just helped destroy my sister's wedding. Friday, the 22nd in the morning, 4 days before the wedding, I got like 20 missed calls from my parents. I finally answered and my mom was hysterical, screaming, what had I done? That Steven had canceled the wedding, that Ashley was devastated, that it was all my fault. My dad took the phone from her and demanded I call Steven and tell him I'd lied about everything, to fix the mess I'd caused. I told him I hadn't lied about anything, that I'd only told him the truth, and my dad yelled at me that I was selfish and a bad son, that I'd ruined the most important day of my sister's life out of pure spite. I hung up on them because I couldn't take their screaming anymore and turned off my phone. Like an hour later, my mom started sending me emails because I'd blocked my phone, I assume, begging me not to post anything about this on social media, not to tell anyone what had happened, that the family didn't need that kind of public drama. She didn't even ask me how I was, if I needed anything, where I was living. She only cared about protecting Ashley's image and avoiding public embarrassment. I deleted all her emails without responding. At that moment, I decided to call my paternal grandparents. They live in another state, like 3 hours by plane, and they'd always been nice to me when I visited them, which didn't happen often because my parents preferred to spend time with my mom's parents, who lived closer. I told them absolutely everything, from years of emotional neglect to the recent incident. My grandmother started crying, and my grandfather was furious. They asked me why I'd never give them anything before, and honestly, I don't know. I guess I thought that was normal life, that all younger siblings were treated like that. My grandparents told me they were coming, that they'd take the next available flight, not to worry about anything. They also called my maternal grandparents, my mom's parents, who lived like an hour away, but I didn't see much because they were older and my grandmother was sick. Apparently, my maternal grandparents didn't know anything about how they treated me either, and when they found out, they also took my paternal grandparents' side, saying this was unacceptable. Saturday, the 23rd, my paternal grandparents arrived in town and went straight to confront my parents. I was at Jess's house when this happened, but my grandfather called me afterwards to tell me about it. Apparently, it was a huge argument where my grandparents told my parents they were a disgrace. How dare they treat their own son like that? What kind of parents kick a minor out of their house for wedding guests? My parents tried to defend themselves, saying I was exaggerating, that they'd always given me everything I needed. But my grandparents didn't believe them at all. That same afternoon, Ashley and Stephen made a post on social media announcing the wedding was postponed indefinitely, that they needed time to resolve some personal issues. All the guests who'd already traveled had to go back. The venue obviously didn't refund the deposit. It was a total disaster. Part of me felt bad about all the chaos, but another part thought, well, this wouldn't have happened if they'd treated me like a basic human being, you know? Sunday, my paternal grandparents met with me, with Linda and Mark, and with my maternal grandparents. My maternal grandfather came alone because my grandmother was too sick to travel. Basically, all the adults who really loved me were there trying to figure out what was going to happen with me. Linda and Mark offered to let me stay with them until I finished high school, which I had like 2 more months until graduation. My paternal grandparents wanted to take me to live with them, but that would mean changing schools and states, and we all agreed that wasn't ideal in the middle of my senior year. We came to an agreement where I'd stay with Jess's family until I graduated, then spend summers with my paternal grandparents. And when I started college, wherever I ended up going, they'd help me financially. My maternal grandparents, though they couldn't help physically because of my grandmother's illness, said they'd also contribute financially for my college and anything I needed. But for all this to be legal and official, we needed my parents to sign papers giving up their custody. My paternal grandparents went with a lawyer on Monday and basically gave my parents an ultimatum. Either they signed voluntarily and this stayed private, or they were going to fight for custody legally and the whole thing would come out publicly. My parents, probably more worried about their reputation than anything else, signed the papers without much of a fight. Officially, my paternal grandparents have primary custody of me, but with the agreement that I can live with Jess's family until I graduate. Tuesday, the 26th, the day the wedding was supposed to be, Stephen sent a message to Jess, because he still had everyone from my family blocked, saying that he and Ashley had officially broken up, that the wedding was permanently canceled, not just postponed. Apparently, after this whole situation, Stephen started noticing many other things about Ashley that bothered him: her selfishness, her lack of empathy, how she treated waiters and service people badly. Basically, he realized the person he thought he was marrying wasn't who he thought she was. Ashley tried to contact me several times, leaving me voicemails where she alternated between insulting me and begging me to talk to Stephen for her. In one of the messages, she told me it was my fault her life was ruined, that I'd always been a terrible brother, that she'd never forgive me. In another message, she was asking me to please help her, that she'd just made a mistake, that she didn't deserve to lose everything over something so small. Honestly, I never responded to her. I had nothing to say to her. My parents sent me one last email like a week after all the drama, basically saying they forgave me for ruining the wedding, as if I needed their forgiveness. That they hoped when I matured I'd realize the damage I'd caused, and that if I ever wanted to have a relationship with them again, it would have to be me who sought to reconnect. I deleted the email without finishing reading it. I have no interest in reconnecting with people who never saw me as their son, only as an inconvenience. Now, it's been like 3 weeks since all this. And honestly, I'm better than ever. I live in a house where people ask me how my day was, where someone cooks thinking about what I like, where I can study in peace without feeling like a burden. Linda and Mark treat me like I'm their son. Jess is the sister Ashley never was. I have my own space, my own things, people who really care about me. I'm about to graduate from high school. My grades are still good despite all the drama, and it turns out my SATs came out better than I expected considering the circumstances. I'm applying to universities with help from my grandparents and Mark, who turns out knows a lot about the application process because he works in human resources and has helped many young people with this. For the first time in my life, I feel like I have a real future, that there are people who believe in me and support me. Do I miss my biological family? Honestly, no. And that says a lot, doesn't it? You're supposed to miss your parents, feel like something's missing, but all I feel is relief. Relief from not having to walk on eggshells all the time, from not feeling invisible in my own house, from not constantly seeing someone else receive all the love and attention while you get ignored. It's like I'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks for years and finally someone told me I could take it off. My paternal grandparents call me every 2 days to see how I am. My maternal grandfather visits me on weekends when he can to take me to breakfast and catch up. Turns out I had all this family who loved and supported me. My parents had just basically isolated me from them. My paternal grandparents told me they'd tried to be more present in my life when I was a kid, but my parents always made excuses. That I was busy, that I had homework, that it wasn't a good time. Basically, they hid me from the people who really cared about me. Sometimes I think about Ashley and wonder how she is. If she regrets anything. If she learned anything from all this. Probably not. To be honest, people like her rarely blame themselves for anything. She probably still hates me and thinks I ruined her life intentionally, when in reality, she ruined her own life by being a terrible person. Stephen dodged a huge bullet. Honestly, last week was my 17-and-a-half birthday. Yes, I celebrate it like that. It's silly, but I like it. And Linda made me my favorite cake. Mark gave me a gift card to buy books. Jess organized a small gathering with our close friends. It was simple, casual, but it meant more to me than anything my biological family ever did. Because these people weren't giving me things out of obligation or because they were embarrassed not to, they were giving them to me because they really cared, because they wanted to see me happy. And that's enough for me, you know? I'm finally in a place where I'm seen, where I matter, where I can be myself without feeling like I'm bothering someone just by existing. I'll probably never talk to my parents or Ashley again, and that's okay. I've already grieved the family I never had. Now I have a new family. One I chose and that chose me, and that's worth more than any blood tie.